Welcome back and good morning again. Thanks for supporting the First Christian Symposium on Aliens here in Roswell, New Mexico. Our next speaker, our first speaker for Saturday, July 4th, is Joe Jordan. We've been affiliated for 10 years together along with Chris Ward. He's been a huge help in my ministry and a good friend in my personal life. And he's got a talk that is really paradigm shifting. It really changes people's perspective to understand the spiritual perspective of this UFO or abduction phenomena. He's a very good man, and I'm so glad to have him back here again. Thank you for all your support over the years. And Lord Jesus, Father God, we love you. We thank you. Ask you to be with Joe, bless him, and anoint him. And we just pray for ears that will hear what your Spirit has to say today, Father. In Jesus' name.
Good morning, everyone. As you can see, the title of this morning's talk is Unholy Communion, the Spiritual Nature of Abduction Reports. Before we start into this, I must give you a warning. Whenever I share this talk, I share this warning. It's important. The following information may change your preconceived notions of the alien abduction experience. What is alien abduction? This is taken from Wikipedia, okay? The terms alien abduction or the abduction phenomenon describe subjectively real memories of being taken secretly and or against one's will by apparently non-human entities and subjected to complex physical and psychological procedures. What I'm going to share with you today is some of the most powerful evidence in the UFO community about what this experience is about and the entities behind them. We've shared this over the years, and we always get a lot of flack from what I'm about to share. So hang on to your seats. The way that I start with this is I have to take you back to where I started, because this has been a long process of 15 years to get to this point, and I want to share with you how we got here, because it's a sequence of events that you'll see how important all this is once it's all put together. A lot of people ask, how did you even become a UFO investigator? I mean, there's a lot of UFO investigator researchers out there, and it's probably a question some of you have asked. How do these people even get involved in this stuff? For me, it started in 1992. I worked for a major boat company in Florida. I'm from the Kennedy Space Center area, and I had some vacation time during the year in 1992. And I went to visit my brother, who was in the Air Force, stationed up at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. And I had a week's time off that I could go up there and visit with him. I took my son with me, and my mom went with me, and we went up to visit and have a good time and see the sights. But it's a 10-hour flight out of Orlando, Florida, to go to Alaska. That's a long time on a plane. I needed something to read to keep me occupied. While we were in the airport, I went to the little bookstores they have in the airport, magazines, books, snacks, things like that. I browsed through the magazines. I didn't see anything really that caught my attention. I'm not much into sports and politics and all that. So I went over to the books area, and I'm browsing through the paperbacks that they have. And I came across one particular book, and it caught my eye, and I picked it up and looked at the cover of it. And it looked like a science fiction book. I was an avid science fiction reader when I was a teenager in high school. I actually grew up as an Army brat, and I spent a lot of time overseas growing up in my younger years. We didn't have TV or radio and stuff like that to keep us occupied like you guys got today. So books were a great escapism. And mine was science fiction. I love science fiction. Robert Heinlein, Frederick K. Paul, H.G. Wells, you know, it was great. And as I was looking at this book that I had picked up, it looked like a science fiction book. But when I turned it over and looked at the backside to read the synopsis on what it was about, I was puzzled because here it looked like any other science fiction book I'd picked up, but it was saying that this was a story about an investigation that was done, and it was based with science fact and full of scientific research, and this was their documentation of their investigation. That book was UFO Crash at Roswell. I'd never heard about UFOs before. I might have seen movies of it, but it never connected. It wasn't something that I was concerned with at all in my life. I was hardworking at the boat company for many years already, raising a son. So I was busy with everyday life. UFOs was the farthest thing from my mind. But when I read this book on that vacation trip, I was hooked. I thought, because all the things that I thought were fantasy in my younger years growing up, these people were saying was real. And how could that possibly be? So I had to know more. When I got back from the trip, I wanted to know more about this subject of UFOs and aliens. I got to have some answers to what I had just read. And it happened to be about 3 or 4 weeks after I got back, I was watching TV at home one night, and it was the local news, and they were doing interviews with local businessmen in the area and new businesses that were opening up. And they were interviewing a fellow who said, was sharing with everybody that he had just opened up a UFO museum on International Drive in Orlando, Florida. And he got into telling about all the information dealing with UFOs over the years and what he had in his museum. It was like a historical walkthrough museum, sort of like what they have downtown here in Roswell. And I thought, wow, this is a place I can go to find out some more. So over the next couple months, I made a number of trips over to meet this fellow, and him and his wife together were running the place. Nice little walkthrough museum, had books in front where you could purchase, you know, little knickknacks and books and stuff like that dealing with UFOs. And as he saw me being local, coming back to see him a number of times, we finally started talking to each other. And he says, "You seem to have a very keen interest in this. You know, is there anything I can help you with?" And I told him about picking up that first book and it grabbing my attention, and I had to know more. And he says, "You know, would you like to be more involved in finding out what this is about?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, I belong to an organization that researches UFOs, and it's the Mutual UFO Network." Over the next few months, he helped me become a member of MUFON. He helped me work up my investigator status as a field investigator for MUFON, and we became very good friends. I learned what was involved with doing investigations. And being local, I was on the Space Coast and he's in Central Florida. He said, "You know, over on the Space Coast, there's no chapter for MUFON." He said, "I know there's some members over there, but there's no chapter for it. There's nobody running the organization for the county." He said, "Would you be interested in maybe taking charge of that and putting together a group of investigators to cover that area?" And I thought, wow, this sounds interesting. Here I'm going from knowing nothing about UFOs to getting one little book to now working up to I'm going to be in charge of doing investigations in my area. And we took time, we talked to the state director of Florida who lives up in Gulf Breeze and the assistant state director, and they told me what was involved with being a state section director for my county. And I had an interview with them. The fellow from the museum backed up for me because he was the state section director for Orange County there in Central Florida. And they put me through all the paces on what was involved, and I became state section director for the Kennedy Space Center area, Brevard County, Florida, in 1992. What better place to be a UFO investigator? One of the most top secret clearance areas in the country. You know, they got an airspace, it's totally controlled, so they say. But amazingly, over the years, we investigated UFOs over their airspace. So that gets quite interesting. So I had a good area to be involved in. We put together monthly meetings, which was required by this, as the state section director, for the public to attend in our county. We used the public library. It was open to the public. We wanted to be able to share with the public what MUFON was doing and some of the cases we were working on, and just get them up to date on UFO information. I also had to put together a team of investigators, and it wasn't long before I had 5 good field investigators working under me. And we put the word out there through the sheriff's department, the police department, the fire department, and the news, that if anybody reported a UFO sighting, that we would be glad to take the report and follow up on it, because they don't really care to do that. They don't know how to handle it. So we were there for them. This is what MUFON does. MUFON is the largest grassroots scientific-based organization in the world today. There's over 5,000 members of investigators, consultants. We have a lot of tools at our fingertips as MUFON investigators to be able to follow up on reports and do the investigations. As we held our monthly meetings, though, and we were doing sighting reports, we did a number of them over the first couple of years, we started to take a look at what was happening here with the UFO picture. And doing sighting reports, we found after a couple of years of it, it's like chasing your tail. How many sighting reports is it going to take till we figure out what this is? They've been going on since the 40s and 50s. They still don't have an absolute answer to what this phenomenon's about. And looking at the people coming to our meetings, we were hearing stories from people who were saying they were abductees or contactees. And we started listening to them, and they were saying that they had been in contact with these entities that are behind the UFO sightings. Well, we talked about this as investigators, and we said, we can continue to do sightings forever. They've been going on forever, and we may never get to the truth with them. We need to get closer to the source. Well, the contactees and abductees saying they had been in contact with the entities, that's close to the source. So we decided to move our research closer to that source and get into abduction research and try to find out, being closer to the source, what this phenomenon was about. The only problem with that at the time is that MUFON wasn't set up to work with the abduction experiencers. Okay, they're doing scientific-based investigations on UFO sightings. They really didn't have a format to working with the abductions. And we had to kind of separate ourselves to be able to do that. We couldn't do it under the name of MUFON because we had no real guidelines except for what we've been taught as being investigators, to do interviews and research and how to document stuff. So we decided to set up a separate entity organization called CE4 Research. And CE4, Close Encounter of the Fourth Kind. That's what that stands for. You got first kind, second kind, third kind. Of course, you've all seen the movie The Third Kind. Fourth kind is abductions. So that's what we titled our group. Even from the beginning, the information was always available to MUFON. We never kept it separate. We always offered it if they wanted to see it. But like I said, they weren't really set up at the time to be involved with that. So we started interviewing the abductees and the contactees that we had come into the meetings over the next couple of years, started documenting all the information. And as we were doing this, we were also learning as much as we could from other researchers who were in this field, the big names, that Bud Hopkins, Whitley Strieber, John Mack, they had done extensive research already. And because the abductees and contactees that we were encountering seemed to have a lot of personal issues, we didn't want to do any more damage to these people by working with them and interviewing them. So we needed to learn as much about them as we could. So we consumed all of the research we could get our hands on from the researchers that were well known, that had been working on this for some years. We wanted to be prepared as we went into this so that we wouldn't cause any more harm to these people than what they had gone through already. And I want to give you a little idea of what the abduction experience is about. And one of the best examples of this was written by the late Dr. Carla Turner, who was actually an experiencer herself. And she put together a really good piece to take you through and show you exactly what these experiencers go through. If abduction reports can be believed, and there is no reason to doubt the honesty of the reporters, the abduction phenomenon includes the following details. Aliens can alter our perception of our surroundings. Aliens can control what we think we see. They can appear to us in any number of guises and shapes. Aliens can take us, our consciousness, out of our physical bodies, disable our control of our bodies, install one of their own entities, and use our bodies as vehicles for their own activities before returning our consciousness to our bodies. Aliens can be present with us in an invisible state and can make themselves only partially visible. Abductees receive marks on their bodies other than the well-known scoop and straight-line scars. These other marks include single punctures, multiple punctures, large bruises, 3- and 4-fingered claw marks, and triangles of every possible sort. Female abductees often suffer gynecological problems after their alien encounters, and sometimes these problems lead to cysts, tumors, cancer of the breast and uterus, and hysterectomies. Aliens can take body fluids from our necks, spines, blood veins, joints such as knees and wrists, and other places. They also inject unknown fluids into various parts of our bodies. A surprising number of abductees suffer from serious illnesses they didn't have before their encounters. They have led to surgery, debilitation, and even death from causes that doctors can't identify. Some abductees experience a degeneration of their mental, social, and spiritual well-being. Excessive behavior frequently erupts, such as drug abuse, alcoholism, overeating, and promiscuity. Strange obsessions develop and cause the disruption of normal life and the destruction of personal relationships. Aliens show a great interest in adult sexuality, child sexuality, and in inflicting physical pain on abductees. Abductees recall being instructed and trained by aliens. This training may be in the form of verbal or telepathic lessons, slideshows, or actual hands-on instruction in the operation of alien technology. Abductees report being taken to facilities in which they encounter not only aliens but normal-looking humans, sometimes in military uniforms, working with the alien captors. Abductees often encounter more than one sort of alien during an experience, not just the grays. Every possible combination of gray, reptoid, insectoid, blonde, and widow's peak have been seen during single abductions aboard the same craft or in the same facility. Abductees report being taken to underground facilities where they see grotesque hybrid creatures, nurseries of hybrid humanoid fetuses, and vats of colored liquid filled with parts of human bodies. Abductees report seeing other humans in these facilities being drained of blood, being mutilated, flayed, and dismembered, and stacked like lifeless cords of wood. Some abductees have been threatened that they too will end up in this condition if they don't cooperate with their alien captors. Aliens come into homes and temporarily remove young children, leaving their distraught parents paralyzed and helpless. In cases where a parent has been able to protest, the aliens insist the children belong to us. Aliens have forced their abductees to have sexual intercourse with aliens and even with other abductees while groups of aliens observe these performances. In such encounters, the aliens have sometimes disguised themselves in order to gain the cooperation of the abductees, appearing in such forms as Jesus, the Pope, certain celebrities, and even the dead spouses of the abductees. Aliens perform extremely painful experiments or procedures on abductees, saying that these acts are necessary but give no explanation why. Painful genital and anal probes are performed on children as well as adults. Aliens make predictions of an imminent period of global chaos and destruction. They say that a certain number of humans will be rescued from the planet in order to continue the species, either on another planet or back on the earth after the destruction is over. Many abductees report they don't believe they're alien captors and foresee instead a much more sinister use of the rescued humans. In every instance from this list, there are multiple reports from unrelated cases confirming that such bizarre details are not the product of a single deranged mind. These details are convincing evidence that, contrary to the claims of many UFO researchers, the abduction experience isn't limited to uniform pattern of events. The phenomenon simply can't be explained in terms of crossbreeding experiments or scientific research into the human physiology. Before we allow ourselves to believe in the benevolence of the alien interaction, we should ask, do enlightened beings need to use the cover of night to perform good deeds? Do they need to paralyze us and render us helpless to resist? Do angels need to steal our fetuses? Do they need to manipulate our children's genitals and probe our rectums? Are fear, pain, and deception consistent with high spiritual motives? And again, that was the late Dr. Carla Turner. Another thing that these people get in their messages through the communication from these entities through the experience, there's a number of these that I touched on. There'll be other speakers coming up talking more about the alien message, but this is a few of them. They say they are the ones who have created us by using DNA. They will guide us in our next evolutionary step. Jesus, Moses, Buddha, Muhammad, and other religious leaders were really them. That the earth is actually a living organism. They teach that the earth will be destroyed if they cannot change mankind. They teach that they are more advanced both technologically and spiritually. They teach that they are corporeal beings and that they reside in other star systems. They teach that they are our benefactors. I have a special video that I'd like to share with you. It's about a family that has gone through this experience. The experiences of examples I just read to you here from Carla Turner. I want you to see the actual people themselves and how it's affected them and their family. It's a short video, it's about 8 minutes, and I'm going to let it play, and then we'll come back and we'll move on. Okay?
Ordinary, everyday people that this has happened to. And it can happen to anybody. I didn't want to believe that it happened to me, but it did.
Joyce Aarons and her family believe that what happened to them was not an isolated incident. One highly controversial study conducted by the Roper Poll suggests that hundreds of thousands, even millions of Americans, have memories that indicate that they may have been kidnapped by aliens. Abduction researchers believe these abductions happen generation after generation, as this family from West Plains, Missouri can attest. Their story starts one evening in the fall of 1976, in the presumed safety of their home.
I remember just lying there, trying to relax. I'd opened my eyes, I seen a red light flowing across the ceiling, which it almost looked like the Aurora Borealis.
Dan and Joyce Ahrens say the room was dark except for the unusual light, which they describe as about 4 or 5 feet in diameter. They say it hovered over the baby's crib at the foot of their bed where their 1-year-old daughter Heather slept. Dan says that when he tried to get up, he found himself immobilized.
That was the most frightening feeling I guess I've ever had in my whole life, is not being able to move.
I was screaming for him to help me because I couldn't move. And I didn't know that he was paralyzed too. And we both sat up in the bed at the same time. And I said, what the hell was that?
The incident was over in what seemed like an instant. The baby was standing up in her crib looking dazed but unharmed. Dan and Joyce thought they had just shared a scary dream. That is until 1992, 16 years later. Dan, a computer technician, was working at his keyboard when suddenly he was seized by panic.
I immediately thought I was having a heart attack because I started sweating real bad. My ears were ringing. It was a real tight feeling in my head.
Dan was rushed to the emergency room where doctors ran tests and ordered x-rays. When the results were in, they concluded that Dan had suffered an anxiety attack and sent him home, but the symptoms persisted.
To see him like that was devastating. He couldn't leave the house. He was so scared.
After 6 weeks of constant fear, Dan sat down in front of the TV trying to relax. He turned on a movie that happened to be about alien abductions. Dan experienced a sudden revelation.
There was one part in that movie that this little creature, whatever, was kind of peeking out from around the door, and it was in the dark and the shadows, you know, and everything. And I immediately just, my heart started racing, and I just kind of completely went out of it again.
Dan wondered, was his anxiety somehow related to the subject of the movie? He later chanced upon another television show about alien abductions and watched an interview with therapist John Carpenter, the National Director of Abduction Research for the Mutual UFO Network. Dan immediately contacted Carpenter for help.
He suffered from a panic disorder at that point in time, and he had flashbacks and nightmarish images of these beings, but didn't understand what was going on and needed some relief.
Dan agreed to an on-camera hypnosis session with Carpenter, during which he revisited that memorable night in 1976, the night he saw the red light over the baby's crib. This time, under hypnosis, he remembers more. He recalls cowering in the corner of his bed as he watched alien beings take his daughter Heather from her crib.
He went to the crib.
He went to the crib.
Picked her up.
Uh-huh.
I can't move.
You can't move. You don't have any control over what's happening to you.
No.
What do you see happening now?
He took her.
He took her.
Under separate hypnosis, Dan's wife Joyce recalled the same sequence of events. They both say little beings marched them outside, and together the family was floated onto a spaceship.
I never wanted it to happen to my children. I didn't realize until later that it had. But when they took her, I couldn't do anything.
Heather, now 22 and married, remembers a series of abductions beginning in childhood, when she was forced to play telepathic games with the aliens.
How do you play the game?
If I pick up that one, he'll let me go.
What are you feeling?
I want to go home.
Mm-hmm. What does he tell you about that?
If I pick it up, he'll let me go.
The Aarons family believes alien kidnappers have not only intruded in the lives of their children, but are now visiting one of their grandchildren.
He calls them his little buddies that come in his room and play. He said he wanted to watch the ship leave. I'm not going to tell him that it's not real, because it is real.
Skeptics would say that Dan, Joyce, and Heather could have constructed their stories together before hypnosis.
But then they'd have to know how to answer the trick questions and the leading suggestions, which I provide. Plus, there are many details they wouldn't know about that we would be looking for as markers for truthfulness and reliability with other abduction data.
Researchers also believe abductees are sincere because of another consistently reported feature of abduction accounts: the insertion of alien implants.
I turned my head to the right, and this taller being came over. And he kept telling me that it would be okay, that they wouldn't hurt me. And then they took this very long needle, and they put it up my right nostril. And I closed my eyes when I heard it crunch. And then I became very calm.
Objects said to be these implants have been recovered. MIT's David Pritchard has examined the composition of one of these reported implants in a laboratory and contends there is absolutely no physical proof of alien activity.
If we don't find physical evidence, and we haven't, then we have to lump this in the category of fairies, elves, near-death experiences people report, or we're going to be back to the days of the medicine men running our society.
With the help of hypnosis, Dan's anxiety subsided and he returned to work. But what once seemed out of this world has now become a part of his life.
If this is some sort of mental thing that's happening to people, then why aren't they out, why aren't the scientists or the doctors or whatever trying to find a cure?
Quite impressive video there, huh? This video, some of you might have seen it. It's aired over the years. It's from A&E. Actually, I've seen it every single year for about the past 6-7 years since I started looking at some of these videos. You see a lot of the similarities from what Dr. Carla Turner talked about right there on that video with this family that they had gone through. You see that this is not a very enjoyable experience for them. You see a lot of things, key things going on here. You see that it also is generational. There's a lot of issues just in that one little 8-minute piece that you can see that covers a lot of the aspects of what the abduction experiencers go through. As we were working with the abduction research, most of them were coming in through our monthly meetings. We had 4 or 5 there that were local, that we were working with, that we were able to work with. But something unusual was also happening in these monthly meetings. Remember, they're MUFON meetings that we had set up, open to the public. And one thing that MUFON had warned me about from the beginning is when you open up a meeting to the public that's about UFOs, you're going to get all sorts of people at these meetings. And it might not all be scientific based. I had no idea what they're talking about until I opened the meetings up. I had people coming in there with all sorts of things to talk about and share, which we opened it up to explore. I mean, they were just things I had absolutely never heard of. A lot of it was things dealing with metaphysics. And I had no clue what metaphysics were about. And we opened up to look at what these people were talking about. A lot of it was what you call metaphysics and New Age teachings. We had to look at them as researchers because they're still part of that UFO puzzle in some way, okay? if you're going to look for the answer to this UFO picture and what is the picture, you got to bring all those pieces to the puzzle to the table to get the final picture, okay? You can't leave pieces out. Now, MUFON might not have been prepared to deal with those pieces, but it doesn't mean they should be excluded, okay? So as an objective researcher and an open-minded researcher at the time, I said, let's look at all of it. So we started looking at these ideas that the people that were coming to the meetings had dealing with the New Age and the metaphysics. There seemed to be a spiritual connection there to the UFO phenomenon. And if you're only looking at it from a scientific point of view, you don't catch that. You have to step back and look at it a lot bigger. And that's what we were doing while we were working with the abduction experiencers. As a matter of fact, a lot of the abduction experiencers on their quest looking for answers through their life were brought into the study of New Age and metaphysics teachings. We kept seeing that over and over and over. It didn't seem like the Christian church was set up at the time to give them any help or answers, so they would go elsewhere looking for these answers. And they were finding that connection between the New Age and metaphysics and the UFO realm. As we were exploring it, I was attracted to it. When I first came into the whole thing with UFOs and becoming a MUFON member, I had no spiritual background at all. I was pretty much what you call an agnostic, which I felt was good because it kept me with no base to be able to distort my views. So my whole beginning into all of this with the work with MUFON and sighting investigations, I was absolutely had a clean slate, no belief system that was affecting it. I could look at this scientifically. As I opened up to looking at the New Age and metaphysical side of it, and as I became attracted to that, and I saw that there was something there that it's like I had this hole, and they had this thing that could fill that hole. You ever had that hole, you know that something's missing in your life? Well, here they had this something that they were offering, and it was a form of spirituality, and it was connected to what I was studying. So over the next couple of years, I went on that quest of enlightenment that these people go through and continue on in their life. I studied everything I could get my hands on dealing with metaphysics and the New Age beliefs, to the point to where I was a practitioner, where I was sharing with people and trying to bring them in. And it was interesting because there were a lot of poor Christians out there that I was converting to the New Age. Why was I able to do that? Because they really didn't know what they believed. And it didn't take too much to get them questioning what they thought they believed in. This went on for about 4 years. We're still working with the abductions and my study into the metaphysics. And in 1996, I had a female investigator working with me because, as you see, a lot of the abductions are with females. And it's hard to talk one-on-one with the females because, with a man, because some of it gets very personal. So I was very lucky to have, at the time, a girlfriend that would come on board and work with me and actually work with the female abduction experiencers. And then we'd compile notes and we'd be able to work like that. In 1996, fall of 96, we had a lot of things going on that were really tying up our time and keeping us busy. But there was a couple cases that we were working on that had a very, very dark effect on us dealing with these two cases. We couldn't put our finger on it, but something wasn't right. When we were dealing with the experiencers and their case, there was a serious oppression at it. It was just like, oh man, what is this? You know, and what's affecting us here? Well, my girlfriend at the time was a Christian, and she didn't quite put all this together yet, but she was helping us in the abduction area. And she pulled me aside one day and she says, you know, she says, something's wrong here. She says, these cases you're working on right now, she says, there's something very dark about him. There's something that seems like there's almost an evil presence involved. And of course, me and my New Age thinking said, you know, evil's just a perception you have of this. There's really no evil. You know, it's all relative, you know. And she says, no, no, no. She says, there's really something wrong here. She says, I know you feel it. She says, you know, when you're working in this area, I think you really need to have some covering, some type of protection on you as you go into this. I think there are some dark forces here that you need to be protected from. Of course, I reach in my pocket and pull out my trusty crystals, and I said, I got all the power I need right here. She says, no, 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 no. She says, that's not what I'm talking about. She says, that's not going to help you. It isn't helping you right now. And I said, well, what are you getting at? And she says, I know of a help that can help you and can protect you. And I said, yeah, what do you got? You know, because I was always looking for something new. That's the whole thing about on your search for enlightenment. You're always looking for that next thing to bring you closer to it. You never really get there. It's just that carrot dangling out there. And I was all ready for this one. And she breaks out a Bible and she sets it on the table and she says, it's in here. And I said, oh, no. I said, that's got nothing to do with what I do. And she says, I think it does. I think you need to take a look at it. And no, 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 no. We don't need to go there. And she says, oh, wait a minute. You said you're the most open-minded, objective investigator there is. You tell people that. And I said, I am. She says, then you'll take a look at this? I said, guess what? I just been had. So we sat down and I said, show me what you got. You don't want to piss off the girlfriend. And I gave her time. And something miraculously happened. For the first time, I grew up in the church, left it as a teenager, got disgruntled because of the world, and but I knew, I'd heard the word before. I'd heard God's word growing up, just put it away for 30 years. And she shared with me the gospel message out of the Bible. And it's like I had never heard it before. It's like blinders were taken off my eyes and earplugs were pulled out of my ears. All of a sudden, it made absolute perfect sense. And she showed me that there was a protection in there that I could have that was over everything that there is. And I said, you know what? I want that. So in 1996, in November, I became a Christian. I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I didn't know what I was. I mean, I'd been an agnostic, I'd been New Age. As an investigator, I'm asking, okay, what's a Christian? What am I now? Help me study this so I can find out what I am, what I have. So in December, that next month, I had 2 weeks off from work. We shut down the plant in the middle of December for 2 weeks, 1 week in the summer. And one of my other investigators, who was a Christian also, one of my founders of CE4, my partner Wes Clark at the time, he says, you know, I got a friend that's got this really powerful video Bible study course. He says, I think we can get him to sit down with us and we can view it. It'll probably take the whole 2 weeks doing a video a night. So in December, we set it up to go to this fellow's house, play these videos. And one night by one night by one night, we were going through it and learning Bible study. This was an absolutely intense course. I mean, I was getting more information in those 2 weeks sitting through a video a night than I could get in 50 years of sitting in Sunday school. So this is what I needed as an investigator. I wanted to know now, and I wanted to know as much as possible. So it was a great course that we went through. One night, we were sitting there in this fellow's house listening to this guy doing the talk on the video, and something happened. We're all comfortable, and then he starts bringing up the topic of that he's going to say for that night, and it happened to be something called spiritual warfare. I went, whoa, what is spiritual warfare? That sounds cool. That's a really neat thing to talk about. Let's hear more about it. Never heard of that term before. Well, as he gets into it, he brings up this verse out of Ephesians. For we wrestle not, hear that word? Against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And there's another translation. That's from King James Version. There's another translation at the bottom. For our struggle is not against human opponents, but against rulers, authorities, cosmic powers in the darkness around us, and evil spiritual forces in the heavenly realm. Okay? As soon as I heard this man say this scripture, I had a vision. Sitting there on a couch in this fellow's house, watching a video, as soon as I heard this, I had a vision right in front of my face. You know, I'd heard about visions and people getting things like that when I was in the New Age. I talked to many people that had had vision experiences, prophetic experiences. Never had one myself. Always wanted to. But wasn't until I became a Christian that I had one. And it was during this reading of the scripture. What did I see? I saw the alien gray right in front of my face. And in the instant, it morphed to the most horrific thing I had ever seen. In that moment, I knew that what we were dealing with was not what it appeared to be. I said, stop that video. You guys, I've just seen something I've got to share with you. And when I shared that with them, I said, you know, I don't want to do this UFO stuff anymore. I said, this is not where we need to be dealing with. I said, I'm going to stop this. And my partner Wes was there with me, and he says, you know what, I agree with you. As a Christian I've been for many years, I don't know how I missed this. So we agreed to put everything aside and move on becoming Christians and doing Bible study. About a month went by, and I get this, like, excuse me, I need your attention here. I didn't know where this was coming from. And being a new Christian, I didn't know how God talked to you. But he was trying to get my attention. And what I was getting was, you're not done yet. And I said, well, yes, I am. I said, I see what this is. I don't want any more part of it. He says, you're not done yet. I said, all right. What do you want me to do here? He says, I want you to take this back out, what you've learned, back out to where you came from. And I said, if this is God, I can't do that. I said, I can't take this word of God back to the New Age, the metaphysical realm, the non-believers, because they don't believe the word of God. I said, you got to give me something better than that. Well, nobody told me you don't talk to God like that. So I thought, okay, that'll hold him off. A couple of weeks went by, and I get, excuse me. I'm going, okay, you already got what you need. And I thought, I already have what I need? So I told my partner, Wes, what I was getting here, and he says, well, let's go back and look at what we have. We came across a particular video we had done 6 months before we came to the truth. We had videoed this person in his home. We had sat there right in front of him, listening to him, watched him, never heard a word he said. The video caught it, though. It's interesting. Went back and played this particular video, and this is what we found. What follows is the case of Bill D's experience that took place in Christmas, Florida in 1976. His abduction started out typically late at night in bed. Earlier in the evening, he saw some anomalous lights through the living room window over a forest north of his house. He assumed it was a police helicopter searching for drug runners or something. Whatever it was, it agitated his dogs for several hours thereafter. He eventually went to bed. He was lying in bed, kept wide awake by the barking dogs when paralysis set in. He was unable to cry out. He He could see nothing but a whitish gray, like a mist or a fog, although he sensed someone or something was in his room. His wife didn't awaken. The next thing he knew, he was being levitated above his bed. He then had the sensation he was being suspended by what felt like a pole inserted into his rectum. By this time, he was alive with terror, but couldn't scream. Here's where the story becomes very interesting. The following is an excerpt taken directly from the transcript of Mr. D's interview. I thought I was having a satanic experience, that the devil had gotten a hold of me and had shoved a pole up my rectum and was holding me up in the air. So helpless, I couldn't do anything. I said, Jesus, Jesus, help me, or Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. When I did, there was a feeling or a sound or something that either my words that I had thought or the words that I had tried to say or whatever had hurt whatever was holding me up in the air on this pole. And I felt like it was withdrawn and I fell. I hit the bed because it was like I was thrown back in the bed. I really can't tell, but when I did, my wife woke up and asked why I was jumping on the bed. Typical type of experience. I hear this many times, you know, same scenarios. In all the research we had done, we had never heard of a case of anybody stopping an experience. All the researchers, the top researchers, were saying that this could not be done. You couldn't stop an abduction experience. They had no record of it. So here I am with a case where a guy says he called out in the name of Jesus and stopped an experience. Was this one case unusual? But I knew I had something powerful. When God showed me to go back and look at this video, I knew this was something unique. And if I could confirm that it wasn't just unique in that one case, then this could be absolutely huge in the UFO community. I contacted these top researchers in the country. I said, guys, I've got a case here. I don't know what to make of it. I shared them the case. Each time I did, they asked, can we go off the record? I said, sure. I can't tell you their names, but I can tell you what they said. Each one of them said, yes, sir, we've come across cases like this ourselves, where they've been able to stop it using prayer or Jesus' name. I said, excuse me, how come we have never seen this documented? You're telling us otherwise, that it can't be done, it can't be stopped. First answer they usually gave us, we didn't know what to make of it. I would have been fine with that. The second answer is what puzzled me and got me kind of angry. Because it was that one that I want you to hear for sure. They said we couldn't go there because it might affect our credibility in the realm. Do I hear cover-up? Did I mention government? No, I didn't. What I'm telling you is there's a cover-up about this information, and has been, by the top researchers that you people rely on to hear the truth from. I said to them, you know guys, I got nothing to lose. I work for a living, I don't write books, I don't do all this stuff that you do. I said, I just want to document this as a researcher. So I went after those cases because I now knew they were there. Over the next 10 years, I have now worked with over 400 cases of people that have been able to stop the abduction experience in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. This is documented evidence. Okay? Documented evidence. I questioned, I had to show biblically if this was relating to the Bible. Where did the authority come from? Back to Ephesians. At the end of Ephesians, in that chapter, talking about spiritual warfare, after putting on the whole armor of God, which is defense, protection, these people were showing that there was an offensive move. An offensive move. You can be in defense with protection, but to defeat the enemy, these entities, you have to do something offensive. Ephesians 6:19, and for me, that utterance may be given unto me, that I may open my mouth boldly. That's what these people have done in the presence of these entities, to make known the mystery of the gospel. What's that mystery? This is where the authority comes, that they're able to stop these entities, because it's Christ in you. That power was passed down from God to the Son, Father to the Son, over everything above the earth, on the earth, and below the earth. When you become a Christian, give yourself to Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit passes that authority on to you. Talk about high technology from planets from who knows where. I don't think this is what we're dealing with. And all this supposed high technology that they seem to have, guess what? It takes only one name to put them in their place. We are dealing with a huge, probably the most important deception on humanity. These are entities masquerading as high technological aliens, but they can be defeated by one name. I have case upon case upon case upon case that can prove that. Different causes for the experience, they're still questioning this. Researchers don't know where this comes from. Where does experience come from? We found answers to this working with these testimonies. First one, you asked for it. Think people ask for this? Excuse me, we stand at the tables at these conventions and share our information with people. I've had people come right up to me and say, I'd sure like to experience that. Be careful what you ask for. Some people unknowingly open a door to the experience by being involved in New Age or occult activities. When you engage in the unknown things outside of God, the Creator and His Word, you make yourself vulnerable to these entities. We have found this reason to be most often the root cause. And then there are also people that fall into the generational cycle. You saw the generational cycle working right there with Joyce and her family. This can continue through generations. These are the things we found. My website, ce4research.com, I've got over 75 of the testimonies up on there as evidence for you, free to go see and read what these people have been through. Read that they have been set free by the name and authority of Jesus Christ from this experience. You seeing a spiritual connection here? Absolutely. I've even have audio testimonies that we're posting up there now. You can hear them do it in their own voice. Not just a written testimony. I've had researchers say, you printed that up and stuck it up there. No. They're furious about having this information out there, the rest of the UFO community. They are absolutely furious. You saw my little poster out on the table, Most Hated Man in Ufology. Last year, I was a director for the city of the UFO conference, 2008, for Roswell. I invited some of the top researchers in the country, in the world actually, to come here and talk and give their information. But I also got to talk on the last day. And when I shared this information, they were absolutely furious. And they have been furious ever since. There's blogs upon blogs going out there. I am now the most hated man in ufology. Okay? Because I dared share something that they couldn't. Those people that I talked to before, those researchers, they've never come against me. The ones that I didn't talk to, oh boy. You should hear the things they say. Moving on. This is an example of how we take people through and help them. This is our counseling side of it. The 8 R's. This will be on the video for you guys to see. I'm not going to take too much time and go through them, but we take them through, we help them recognize what they're doing, we help them take responsibility for what they're now recognizing, what they've been involved with, repenting to God for being involved with it, renouncing it, getting rid of everything, or making it your enemy, removing it, resisting it if it tries to come back, because you're going to piss these entities off and they're going to try to harass you for a while, okay? Which does happen. Rejoice, give God thanks for setting you free, and the completion of helping someone become free of all of this is restore. Help someone else get free. And that's where the testimonies come in. Post these testimonies, you're helping somebody else. I'm getting emails after emails after emails of new ones coming in all the time. How many cases does it take for the world to see that what I'm sharing with you today is real? How many cases? They're going to continue to come in. I'm going to continue to share this. We've been looking for an ET message for years and years and years. Guess what? The world seems to have missed the one most important ET message we've had for 2,000 years. This enemy that we're dealing with today, masquerading as angels, does not want you to have this message. They're doing everything they can to deceive us from having this message. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. This is the extraterrestrial message that's been missed. This is the one they don't want you to see. They're replacing it with their own, and it's a lie. You got questions? Go straight to the source. Don't talk to these entities. This scripture right here says you got questions that you don't know the answers to. You got a direct connection to the creator of the universe. Call unto me, God himself. I will answer thee and show thee great and mighty things which thou knowest not. But yet there's people who are channelers that are dealing with entities that have no name, or they can't even verify who they are. They open themselves up to. You don't open a door to people you don't know who they are. You question them first. It's not happening in that realm, the New Age metaphysical realm. You have a direct connection to God himself. Okay? You know what? I can sit up here and talk to you guys and say, trust me. What I'm telling you is the truth. Do any of you really know me? Nope. So, what I'm going to say, do not trust me. Do not take my word for this, because you can trust no man. Do not trust me. I want you to trust the evidence. Okay? The real evidence. Where's the evidence? On that website? The testimonies that are there? Can I do you one better? Would you like to see the evidence right now? Joyce Aarons. You hear that name before? I had an opportunity to meet this lady a few years back. She had left her family. This is Joyce from the video. She left her family. She could no longer be part of all of that. But she was still searching for answers. She ended up in Florida, in my neighborhood. Imagine that. She interrupts my favorite TV show, happened to be the last episode of X-Files. I was pissed. Calls me on the phone. I'm going, I got to take this. So luckily I had a recorder on. Watch it later. And she wants to tell me all. She saw my name in the paper that day, because they had an article that they did because I was MUFON, and it was about the last show of X-Files. So she saw my name, called me on the phone, says, I want to talk to you. I'm an abduction experiencer, blah, blah, blah. She was all excited about being an experiencer. Well, after about 45 minutes of talking to her, I was catching in her voice, you know, she ain't real happy. So I set up to meet with her. I said, I'd like to talk some more with you. So we set up an appointment to meet at this little restaurant, and we met, and I started sharing with her what I had. And you know what? She freaked. I gotta go. And away she went, out the door. I thought, well, that's that. I won't see Joyce again. But you know what? I did see Joyce again. You want to talk?
I'll try. You have to forgive me, I'm a little nervous in front of crowds, okay?
I got it.
Okay, thank you. He's right, I didn't trust him because I was devout atheist. So I didn't believe in God, didn't want to have any part of that. I did tell Joe that I would read the testimonies that he gave me. I do try and keep my word. Whenever I give my word, I do try and keep it. So I took the testimonies and I left, and on my way home, I stopped at a red light. And I got my first vision. And in my vision that I received was a beautiful picture of the world, looking from outside it. And then around it were a couple of hands with very long claws, nails, and a face that started to peer from behind it. Was absolutely hideous. And I knew right then that what he told me was true. I still didn't want to believe that, but I knew. And I knew the powers that I had been dealing with. And I knew I was in deep trouble.
You want me to go from here?
Okay.
About a week later, Joyce calls me and says, I want what you have. I had the opportunity of leading Joyce to Jesus Christ in my living room. I got her located with my church and my fellowship. We brought her up in the Word. She's become a very powerful warrior. Years and years this video has been running. Every year it runs, sometimes a couple a year. But you know what? They don't show the end of the story. You're looking at the end of the story. This lady has been healed, no more experiences. She's back with her family, working with them. This is the evidence right here. Last year when I did this conference down here at the Pearson, I brought the living evidence up on that stage. Not one researcher would talk to these people because they knew if they did, they'd have to deal with it. Instead, they come after and attack us as being Christians. I haven't said anything about preaching Christianity. I'm here to show you evidence that I have come across, and you need to look at the evidence. If it leads you to dealing with Christianity, so be it. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to show you the most powerful evidence in the UFO realm for the entities we are working with. And it's an unwanted piece of that puzzle. Absolutely unwanted. You know what? I brought you one piece of the evidence. How about some more? Guy Malone. Guy's living testimony. He put his book on the internet where you can read it, called Come Sail Away. Living testimony to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these alien entities. Nicole, Guy's wife, she has dealt with these entities. She has overcome them through the name and authority of Jesus Christ. Jackie has dealt with these entities. She can also testify to the name and authority above them. How much more evidence do you need? I got some more. Janet, you out there? Come on up. Janet's from West Virginia. Guy and Nicole are from Roswell. Joyce is from Missouri. Jackie's from here in Roswell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities affecting her life. Kevin, you out there? Come on up. Kevin's from Utah. He can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ over these entities. Ken, you out there? Come on up. Ken's from Vancouver, Washington. Ken can testify to the name and authority of Jesus Christ. This isn't fuzzy pictures. This isn't fuzzy videos. This is real evidence that you can question, you can touch. And I challenge if I challenge you to do that. Because every time I've done this talk and brought the living testimonies up here, nobody questions them. They're afraid to. Because if you do, it's going to change your life. That's why I put that warning up there in the beginning. Okay? This is the evidence. It's here. How much does it take for you to understand what this is? CE4 website, for those of you that want to go and see more. It's called The Unwanted Piece of the Puzzle, and it'll take you through steps to see all of that. I also post the warning when you come to my site. But we're looking for counselors to help. Over 5 million people have estimated to gone through this experience in this country alone. I can't help them all. I need help. We need counselors to help these people. Okay? This is a mission field with millions that need to be helped. We need you in the church to come on and recognize these people are hurting and give them a place of comfort and covering so that they can be helped through this experience. V2, you might have seen these stickers around. V2 is out of Washington State. They've been around longer than we have in this ministry. That sticker, they gave us the opportunity to use that sticker for alien resistance, and we've used it for years. It's part of helping get the word out. Okay? This picture here, it's taken as off the no alien symbol, but it also tells you these are the entities from the same garden, the same lie from the beginning. They're still telling that same old lie. They're just in a different guise. You know, I hope you've seen something that will make you really question what's going on here. You know, there's two sides to a coin. You've been seeing one side for years. Guess what? You just had the opportunity to see what's on the back side of that coin. Now you can make an honest decision on what this phenomenon is about. You can't if you only see one side. You've just had the opportunity to see both sides. And I hope now you'll understand more about what this is about. The evidence, the most powerful evidence in the UFO community is right here in front of you. Question these people. Let them prove to you that this is real. In closing, I'd like to say, Joyce has got one more thing to say.
It's really hard for me to watch that video, but I'm very glad it plays, because I had a woman call me a couple years ago because she saw that video. She looked my name up and called me, and I have talked with her. She is one of God's warriors now. It's awesome. So as long as that plays, I know that it's actually going to help someone, even though I can't stand to watch it myself. I know that it has the power. He's doing it. He'll bring them. I know it. So I guess in a way I'm really glad that's still playing.
Before I close with the final words, if you are out there right now dealing with this experience and you're still searching for the answer, I hope you have that answer now. At least you've been able to make a decision, an honest decision, by seeing both sides. We're offering that opportunity right now for you to be set free. We have some of the most powerful counselors in this field right here today. Do not leave this city. Do not leave this building without being set free from this experience. You walk away from here, you're still in the power of the enemy. You can be set free right now. Don't walk away from here in bondage by these entities. You have what it takes to be set free right now. And we offer you that. Please see us when we're done with this talk. We have counselors that we can talk to you. This could be the most memorable souvenir you could ever take away from Roswell, to be finally set free from the hold of these entities. In final closing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord God, King and ruler of the universe. And I thank you all.